welcome to the Nerd Tea. I'm Stephanie Matarazzo, and I'm here with my guest, Megan Scott, author of The Temptation of Magic. Hello, Megan. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm really excited to talk to you today. This is going to be fun.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. I devoured your book. Like, literally, I read it so fast that I was actually kind of
Oh,
upset at myself that I read it too fast, you know? So I'm so excited to talk to you about it.
thank you. Well, that's the best, honestly, some of the best comments that I can get is when people kind of rush through it. But then, of course, like everyone's like, no, now I have to wait for book two. So
Yes, and you
it's
were
good. It's
just
good and it's
telling
bad.
me. Yeah, and you were
hmm
just telling me that you were in the middle of still like editing it, so it's gonna be such a long time
I
before the
know
next one.
it's the crazy thing about with publishing is everything has to be done so far in advance. So you'll still be editing and you'll think, okay, yeah, it's done. Like it can go to publishing. But in the US especially, they need like about 6, sometimes 9 months after the book is done to kind of do all the stuff behind the scenes. So that can be why it takes such a long time, even if the book is finished.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm,
maybe I'll just
just part
reread
of the
it
process.
then. I know. All right, so for anyone who has not read, and I'm gonna kind of pull it up here just because the
Yeah.
Temptation of Magic. So for anyone who has not read it yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your book?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Megan Scott, and I'm an author from the UK. So I live in the north, and my a lot of my inspiration comes from the fact that I love art history. So I studied it in uni, and then I went to and did a master's in it, art history and classical civilization. So there's a lot of that that comes up in the book. But I also love to bring in like my Irish family history into it. So it's been a lot of fun, like mining my family for stories and like names and things that I can use and learn more about. And then with the book, it's the first, it's also here as well in its UK version. Um, it's the first in a young adult to new adult trilogy. It's set in the UK in a fictional Cornish town, and it's like a little bit cozy, but it's a little bit deadly at the same time. It's one of my favorite things about Estwood as a location. But basically, it follows a young woman called Nicole, and she is suppressing her kind of really deadly instinctual supernatural powers from this organization called the Wake, who, if they find her, will want to bring her in and use her as their loyal huntress because what she is a supernatural that can turn into the predator of any other dangerous creature. So while she's trying to hide away with her family in this little town, she goes to university there and she's trying to find a secret left by her mother in a supernatural painting in a local manor house. And as she's inches away, she finds out that another Imperial has been sent to the town, Kian, who's on hunting a creature that's kind of triggering her, and she's got to keep her secret. But at the same time, he's stationed in the manor where the painting was stolen. So they basically collide. She has to make sure he doesn't figure out who and what she is. And he has to try and make sure that she stays out of his way, which she does not do because she's very adamant to be involved and get this because the creature he's hunting has stolen the painting that she needs. So it's kind of a long way to explain what it's all about, but yeah, it's got a lot of kind of forbidden romance and art history and new supernatural beings and new immortals, and yeah, I love it, and it's out now.
And it is, oh, it's so you touch on so many things that I want to ask you about too because it is such a unique book. So let's get
Thank
into it.
you.
It is. I mean, honestly, I rave about it. I hope that it gets more and more attention because it really is. It was beautiful writing and
Thank
great
you.
storytelling. So let's talk about it. So right now,
Mhm.
this section that we're gonna get into, we're gonna talk about Megan's book. So, the Temptation of Magic.
Mhm.
You my questions are not wanting to load. What the
Don't
heck?
worry.
There they are. Okay, so um, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but you have very unique supernatural being. In fact, you created your own.
Mhm.
How is that? Like, how did you get the idea of creating your own supernatural creature while also having supernatural creatures like from folk tales and stuff like that that we already know?
Yeah, so I think because I when I first wrote it, it was like like 10 plus years ago. So it was kind of in the middle of the vampire craze and like the fae, very, very early, before even before ACOTAR, there was a lot of kind of fae romance books as well
Yeah,
in
like with Holly
YA.
Black.
Yeah, no, well, even I always forget the name, but there was like a bunch of series that were urban fantasy fae romances, um,
Hmm.
and kind of mermaid things. So these were the kind of creatures that were around, and I knew that I loved those type of books, but I really wanted a main character who knew what she was, because that was kind of a trope that was being used a lot of. The character doesn't know what they are, and they discover it, which is a lot of fun, but it was being used a lot in the stories at the time. So I was like, okay, I really want Nicole to know what she is, but I also want her to be the one that is kind of like, I can't control myself. These, what are these, these dangerous feelings, like this dangerous power, because usually that was so um, saved for the male love interest. Um,
Hmm.
so I knew I wanted her to have like a little bit of that dangerous side. And I thought, well, I was like, vampires have been done. So what can I do? What would kind of be the most powerful supernatural predator that would make this story kind of worth it, and make coming up with a new immortal worth it? And then I realized that with the variation of creatures, that if creatures were real, there'd be such a variation that you kind of wouldn't have any one being that could kill them all, or hunt them all, or like protect people from them all, unless it had the ability to adapt itself for each one. So that's where the kind of origins of Imperials came about. Um, and originally, like, I didn't have a name for them either. I just called them hunters. But then I was like, no, yeah, they need a name. So I ended up calling them Imperials, and that also helped inform their kind of the origin myth of because the word Imperial, which we've all become a bit more familiar with, thanks to Fourth Wing as well, actually means of the highest fire in the heavens. So like for me in my book, the myth is that um, Imperials were made by the goddess from stars, and that's like some of that like power goes in them, and that's how they can transform things. So um that's how I came up with Imperials. I really wanted to have something that was a bit new, and then also asked myself things like, if an immortal being was real, what kind of skills would they need? What would a hunter need? And kind of built it from there. So, but like you say, there are lots of other creatures in the book that are real or in our world, because I really wanted it to be a case of because it's kind of a conspiracy in the book. What some of my favorite books like that are, Da Vinci Code or things like this. And I think the key to a good conspiracy is weaving it in with real history. So you then begin to think, what is real, what's not real. This could be real. And that's a lot of fun in a book. And so I knew that if I was going to make a brand new creature, I at least wanted to weave in some established ones, so we could feel like, oh, could this be real? I know about that creature, but this one's new. So I tried
Yeah.
my best.
No, yeah, your entire and that is actually exactly how I felt when I was reading it. It really did feel like, oh, this is like this secret little
Yeah.
thing that is being hidden from us. Like it really felt very much like those creatures are actually could be roaming around, and I think your setting was perfect for it. Like the town that they were in, the city that they were in, it was like perfect for it as well. So no, you did perfect. It was great.
Thank you.
Let's go back a little bit to your characters, actually. So Nicole, you said that, and that is actually one thing that I did like about her. She knew exactly. Um, it was interesting. What I liked about it was like she knew exactly who and what she was. She had the support of her family, who knew exactly who and what she was, but she didn't want to accept who and what she was. And I found that very, very interesting. So tell me a little bit about writing that kind of character.
Yeah, so I think I knew that I wanted her to have a lot of curiosity about what she is, and that there was a kind of scope of her power that she didn't have access to. So, because an Imperial has their kind of standard heightened elements, But until they have their first transformation, they don't really access like the bulk of all the stuff, you know? So I knew that I wanted her to have like a base layer of supernatural elements, but if she was to ever transform, she gives off this kind of new scent. People would know it would draw Imperials. Real danger ensues then. So with Nicole particularly, because she also is, a kind of scholarly character, and she's really looking into all the art history, and because her mother left her all these bestiaries of creatures. So the only way she's ever been able to understand the true depth of the supernatural world, because they're in hiding, has been through studying things. And so that curiosity was something that when I was sitting down with her character, I was like, yeah, she really needs to feel like there's so much of her supernatural powers that she's aware of, but there's also this little secret part of her that really kind of wants to be, a part of that world, but also be able to understand who she is and unleash that side. But if she does, she's so conflicted because it would really endanger her family, and that would be a big problem. So I think that was definitely one of the things I enjoyed to write about her as well, because I didn't want her to be so staunchly against her powers. I think that was sometimes when I read about a character who has magical powers and they don't want them, I'm thinking, I want
Well,
them, give them to
yes,
me.
yes, I will
you know,
take them
yeah,
happily.
yeah, like so that was I was like I wanted her to appreciate what she was and almost feel this frustration that she couldn't use it. But it had to have those real consequences of if she did, or if she got close enough to a creature to trigger her transformation and start the process, then there was going to be real trouble. So I think it really helped layer in a lot of internal conflict for Nicole, and then obviously the big external conflict comes when a creature does arrive, followed by this very perceptive, attractive, immortal guy who's going to cause a lot of problems for her. She's not happy about this, so yeah,
Well, she's semi not happy about this.
yeah.
Semi.
Sometimes
Speaking
she's
of,
happy, sometimes she's annoyed.
yeah. Speaking of the hot immortal guy, let's talk
hmm
about him a little bit because I found him also extremely interesting because he is presented as like he's presented as an adversary, as the
Yeah.
evil guy, as the morally gray love interest that we all kind
hmm
of know, but not really. Like once you
Yeah.
start kind of like reading more about him, he's not really, or at least he doesn't believe himself like to be like this bad guy. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the thing I love about Kian is he is such a good guy actually, but Nicole has no
Yes.
idea. Like she's like this he works for the wake. He must be a horrible person. He's gonna ruin my life. But he's just like, what is your problem? Like I don't understand. I'm here to help you. Like I'm trying to protect these people,
Yeah,
and
like what
she's
is this crazy? Like
she's like, what's wrong with you? Um
I'm
and
the
so
good
I
guy.
thought, yeah, like so I sometimes call this, because it's not enemies to lovers, but
Yeah.
it's like a one-sided enemies to lovers, because she is like this angry little thing that's like, get out of my town, and he's like, why? I don't
So
understand what's
much trying
happening.
to kill people here, like I'm
Yeah.
helping.
Yeah, but obviously to her, there's like so much danger attached to him, and he just has no idea. And there's like a quote in book two. I don't know if it'll stay, but it kind of describes Kian well. Callum says at one point, "Don't worry about Kian. He's a teddy bear." And I'm like, that's kind of like, because he's big, he's powerful, he's knowledgeable, but he believes that he's doing this for good reason, because the imperial power to transform and hunt, you can't turn on and off by yourself, right? It's only triggered by a dangerous creature. So he can never kill with his powers, like for if someone told him to, or because he just wanted to, or so I think because the power of an imperial has this inbuilt morality to it. He
Hmm.
really finds a lot of solace in that, and that's why for him his life has been, this is my purpose, this is what I'm here to do, I want to protect people. But then to others, he can seem dangerous. And obviously, for Nicole, he represents everything that's wrong with the supernatural society because the wake has so many secrets and it killed her mother. So, that's really where like the conflict comes in. And also sometimes when I was writing it, I was like, to me, sometimes it's a little bit funny because she has no idea. I'm like, he's just like, I don't, what, I
No.
don't understand your problem with me. Um, but yeah, so I really liked playing with that dynamic of the two of them, and then, trying to get her to slowly see, wait, hold on, maybe he's not terrible. And obviously he is very perceptive and starting to be like, is she really what she says she is, or is she hiding something? So yeah, that was a lot of fun to build. But I love Kian. He has so much history that is even like mildly hinted at so far. Like I have an entire other book's worth of material on him and like his past, and because a
Oh my.
lot of it is based on, a real time period, like Iron Age Ireland. So I did so much research on the time period and, what would have happened to him in his life? Where would he have gone? So it's also been fun to bring a lot of that into book two. So I'm excited for people to get more of his history and a lot of the secrets come out and yeah, things like that.
I'm super excited because he really is he's a mystery. He's
Hmm.
such a mystery. But it's funny because he's kind of open with Nicole, but he's also a
Yeah,
mystery. Like
yeah,
it's such a, you really did just having that conflict of like the difference between what an imperial should be and then
yeah.
the wake what it is and everything. You kind of really did a great job in creating those internal and external conflicts between the two of them.
Thank you.
Obsessed. I actually, speaking of characters, I actually think the wake as a character itself.
Yeah.
So can you kind of walk me through that character?
Yeah, so because they kind of like govern supernatural society. And the way they do that is they kind of they bring in any Imperials that are discovered and they have them swear an oath to protect and work for the Wake. So, thousands of years ago, there's no such thing as the Wake. Imperials just roamed around and they hunted and killed and protected people. But over time, this society has developed and it has a lot of secrets. So it's not the good ruler that it seems to be. And this is something Nicole knows, but she's not also 1,000% sure on all the details behind it. So her mother, however, figured out a lot of this stuff and tried to leave her breadcrumbs in, which is where the paintings come in, supernatural paintings, and a lot of her bestiaries and secrets and clues to try and unravel why the wake is bad, because obviously it killed her mother. Obviously, it would take away her freedom and try and make her be their hunter forever. But the details of why they are the way they are, what they're doing, is one of the big mysteries of the series. So it was also difficult to kind of balance that, right? Because you need to give book one enough of an understanding as to why these are the bad guys, um, whilst also keeping enough secrets that you can leave it being an adventure and a mystery throughout two more books. So it was actually something that um, I had to think really hard about how much I'm going to give away, and even for myself, because again, it's an organization that would have been like thousands of years old. So how did they develop? What are they up to? And it was also a lot of fun for me as a writer to kind of figure out, because I remember very early on when I was writing it, I didn't know either. Like I was very much a discovery writer back then. So I was like, okay, they're really evil, but like why? And as I did more edits on the books and developed those things, I had enough of a knowledge that I was then able to write that into book one. But yeah, I definitely wanted to keep them quite a mystery, so we have plenty of twists and turns in the next books. But for Kian as well, he doesn't necessarily feel like they're a mystery. He feels like, they've done some things that maybe he's questioned in the past, but for him, he's like, look, I'm an Imperial, this is my job. So he kind of doesn't look twice until Nicole triggers these questions in him. So,
I'm so excited to find out more because you're right. You did such a great job at like hinting. You have all of these characters who are in the know, and yet none of them
yeah,
are in the know.
yeah,
Like at the
it's,
same
yeah.
time.
Hmm. Yeah, that's been one of the things I've had to deal with in book two because I'm like, they know this and they know
Yeah.
this, but are they going to tell people this? And if not, like, if they haven't been able to tell people why, and so there's been it's super complex behind the scenes as the writer. I'm like, oh my God, that meme when it's all the strings and the and the
Oh
guys and
yeah.
it's kind of crazy. That's me. So every time I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to no, I can't reveal that at this point because then this.
Yeah.
So it's also been like a ride as the author to, like you say, like keep those certain things secret. And obviously there's certain characters in the book that seem to know a lot more than they're giving out,
Mm,
and are quite mysterious people. So yeah, it's just like I say, it's been a lot of fun to kind of set like book one is the setup for I
yeah.
think any series. You got to you ground it for the reader and set the vibe, set the tone, begin the story, and then like we get to really get into it in the next ones.
Yeah. Will we soon find out more about Nicole's mom? Because that's talking about mysterious characters. That's like
Mm-hmm.
the mysterious character right
Yes,
there.
there's a there's a lot to find out about pretty much every character.
Oh,
You think, oh yeah, yeah, that this is the mysterious character, but no, there's there's a lot more secrets.
oh my
Yeah, so yeah, it's but yeah, I love Nicole's mom, Freya. She, like you say, she has a lot of secrets. She's written, clues for the kids and bestiaries and things, but that because she died when they were so young, for Nicole, she not only is she such a mystery, but also um she's a character that represents a lot of why Nicole does what she does.
yes.
Why she loves art. Like her mother would show her these pictures when she was just a little baby, and these stuck with her. So I think it was also great to kind of figure out how Freya's absence, but also Freya's clues could have shaped the other characters,
Mm,
and why they are the way they are, why they act the way they do. Like Dylan is one that's very impacted by the loss of their mother. So, um, yeah, it's been. I love Freya, but yeah, she's got a lot of secrets. So I've also got to get into those in the next book. So it's going to be fun.
okay, and actually, you we've been hinting at this whole time, but the last character that I want to talk about is the art. The
Yes.
art is massive, massive. I mean, I love and talking about we talked earlier where you weave things that are true. All the art you talk about is art, like real. It's real art. I looked it up.
Yeah.
I don't know when it occurred to me to be like, wait, is are these real? And I literally
Hmm.
had to look them up, and then I went back and I was, hold on, and I had to
Yeah.
look all because I just had to look all of them. Tell me about that. That's so interesting to me.
Thank you. So I knew because the idea to layer in the art really came to me when I was in uni and I was studying art history. Because I actually remember the moment that I was like, wait, I think, but previously Imperial didn't have any of the art in it. It was mainly just Nicole Keane, what they are and the danger of this other creature. But I was in uni and I was in a little seminar room, tiny little room, and we were having a lecture and just seeing all these gorgeous paint. I've always loved art and I've always loved fine art, like oil paintings.
Mm-hmm.
They just not only are they beautiful, but they're also so impressive to me. To be able to paint something like that is so hard. And before I went to uni for art history, I nearly became an artist. Like I did fine art, so I wanted to be an oil painter and like a portrait painter for a while. So because I had that interest in me, and then I realized, I really want to know more about like art history because I could see that, the art world kind of favored more modern stuff, or at the time. So I was like, okay, I think my interest lies in the myths and the history and the gorgeous big oil paintings. So that's kind of where I went. And then I was in these lectures and I was looking at these paintings and taking notes as you do. And then in my head, I just heard this voice that was like, no, 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 actually, this is what that is. And this is what the creature is. And this is how you deal with it. And I was like, wait, what? So I was sitting there, like, trying to write my notes. And I was like, I can't put that in my university notes. Like, that's not real. So then I made a new document and I would keep it side by side in some of my classes and be writing down like any painting I came across that had mythological elements, like showed gods or goddesses or, nymphs and satyrs and mermaids and anything like this that was supernatural, and then realized that if a supernatural society was real and hidden, but we had these paintings, you know, that would be the only way to know that they were real for like humans. But humans just believe that they're myths, they're long ago myths, and they're just paintings. But Nicole knows that basically every single painting of a supernatural is real. It might not have the real details, because those things need to be a little bit shrouded in mystery. But it meant that over the years that I was studying, and then when I did my master's degree, I did a research degree. So I basically got to spend the year researching whatever I wanted and writing a giant dissertation. So that was another year where, and I was studying a lot of Victorian painting, which is where the majority of the paintings from the book come in. I was finding these paintings, and in some instances, they looked like certain characters, like the painting at the beginning, or in other instances, they were crossing over so much with themes of the book or the characters the types of supernaturals I knew I wanted in the book, like sirens or, fin folk and things like this. So it really became a way for me to ground what I'd built in the real world, but also feeling like it also gave a visual when the character couldn't see those things for herself. So she wasn't allowed to go out and see all these creatures, but if she went to a gallery, she could walk around as much as she wanted in the quiet and the magic of like looking at her world without being threatened by it in a real dangerous way. So I think that's also, where I wanted to put in Nicole's love for paintings, is this feeling of this allows me to see my world without me being in danger. So yeah, it meant then that I was like, I want to use as many real paintings as possible. I want to
Mm-hmm.
use, and there's a lot of female artists in there actually that like it took me a while to find them, because the majority, if you just to Google oil paintings, the majority are going to be male painters, because the female painters just didn't have access to art schools. Um, Later on they did, but it took a really long time, and they weren't able to paint naked people, for example. That was really frowned upon, so they weren't able to do the big paintings of nymphs and satyrs and mermaids. So I really also tried to bring in female painters, so they're mentioned briefly and worked into the story, and especially in book two. But yeah, it was something that I really then aimed for, to use as many real ones as possible. And it's yeah, yeah, I won't say any more because in case I spoil anything. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. I don't think this is a spoiler, but one of the big paintings that Nicole is looking at is the Wild Hunt, and
Mhm.
I will insert somewhere, insert, insert here. But I can see why that would have been a big inspiration for a story like this, because it was fascinating, and I
Mm.
didn't realize until I looked it up that I had seen it
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I was
know
like,
that
oh,
that
I
painting in
think.
particular, a lot of
Yeah.
people have seen. Like, I went into my sister's bedroom one day, and it was in there. She had a
Oh,
postcard of it, and I was like, "What in the world?"
yeah.
So a lot of people have seen that painting, and obviously, the Wild Hunt has a lot of um different origin stories. We've got Scandinavia, we've got England, um, all sorts of other places, and so that again, that was another thing. I was like, why? There's this one myth that's kind of really across the kind of more Celtic countries as well. So I knew that, you're writing a story about hunters, you can't not reference the Wild Hunt. But obviously, it has been referenced before in other books, in beloved books, and well-known books. So it's also something that I was like, if I'm going to use this, I want to try and make sure that it's going to be unique to this story, and also that it just makes sense for the story, because yeah,
Mhm.
they're immortal hunters, so this is going to come up for them.
Yeah, no, I mean it was, and I think it was the way that you were talking about it at first, because it was so well put into the story that it took me a minute to be like, wait, these are real paintings. Like
Yeah,
she didn't
yeah.
make these up, because they were so well ingrained, like integrated into what the story was, that I just assumed that you were making up paintings. Like,
Yeah, it's funny because like a lot of people had the same. reaction, and I've been
Mhm.
really pleasantly surprised because people have messaged me and they've been like, I didn't realize they were real. Like I went and
Yeah.
Googled them all and they're all there. So that was like a lot of fun for me to experience because suddenly, especially there's one illustration that Nicole has by a female artist at the beginning of the book. I won't say which one in case it's a spoiler, but it helped lead them to Estwood, and it really like makes me it really like not to sound cliche but like warms my heart to think that people googled it because I do think that that little one as well because it's a little illustration is probably one that not most people will never have like googled or seen or anything, so it was really nice to then think thanks to it someone's gone and googled that painting, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah.
So
It made
yeah,
me think, you mentioned earlier the Da Vinci Code. I have the Da Vinci Code, but when I was younger when it was like really popular.
yeah.
And so when I went to buy it, I got the illustrated version of it. So
Oh,
like every time they reference one of the paintings or one of the whatever, it would have a picture so that you
oh,
could see
that's
what
cool.
it was amazing. The entire time I was reading your book, I was like, uh-huh, and where's the illustrated version of this book?
Ah.
It is the Da Vinci Code version of The Temptation
Oh,
of
that's
Magic.
yeah. That would be so cool. I think
Yeah.
maybe if the book does well and then later editions can have the paintings in, that would be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think sometimes as well when you're the writer and you're like, okay, now I've got to describe this painting so the reader knows.
Hmm.
I could talk about that painting for several pages, but I just have to really give like the vague, the bare
Yeah.
minimum so that people aren't really being bogged down by all these descriptions of paintings. So that would be really handy. Maybe we
Yeah,
can,
no.
yeah.
I literally just like the whole time I was reading, I was like, I just had Google like next to me, just like, let's see
Yeah.
what the
Well,
painting is.
the Fairy Loot edition did a good job. Actually, hold on, let me show you.
I saw
Let me
it and
grab
I
it.
was upset that I already had the book, and I was like, oh, I can't get that
Yeah.
one.
No, I know. Like they did. Hold on, I'm swinging over. Because in the Fairy Loot edition, I'll just show you. Some of the paintings are put in.
Oh yeah, look at that. Oh,
This is a
that's nice.
very, yeah, this very particular one. And then in the back, this gorgeous mermaid one.
Oh
And
yes.
there's Archean. So I think it's a great material for a special edition to be able to put them in. But yeah,
Yeah.
maybe one day we can put them all in the book. That would be fun.
I think it would really be amazing. Like I literally, it's so funny to me that you said Da Vinci Code because I was like, yeah, I can literally see this. Like,
Mm,
same thing. I would show you, but it is hidden in
don't worry.
under my ear. Like it is down there.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. So now I want to move on to the section about writing.
Mhm.
So I love talking to authors about their writing. And I say this in every episode. This section is not only because I'm extremely curious about writers and their process, but also this is dedicated to the aspiring writers, myself included. And just, I love hearing the different process, the different ways that writers think about and go into a story. So that's what this section is dedicated to. So you talked a little bit. I want to go back. We are already talking about the art and the inspiration of the art. I want to kind of talk about that process about like having all of this inspiration in it, but making sure that they were true to the story that you were writing. So, how did you kind of balance that?
That's a good question. Because yeah, I can. There's, I think I remember reading a quote. I can't remember who it's by, and they said something like 95% of your research isn't going to make it in the book. And I think
Mm-hmm.
when you do, obviously if it's a historical or even, I think I also like Victoria Aveyard's tip of if you're going to do like a fantasy but you're obviously going to base it on a historical time period vaguely, like try and pick a year so you know like what technology is before and what isn't. That's really good tip. But for me with deciding which ones to pick, it was really weird because sometimes it just felt like the perfect ones fell into my lap, and I was finding these very weird coincidences or matches between the paintings. For example, there's a painting, I won't say which or what, which is kind of annoying, but because it's going to come in. And the background of the painting is exactly like the location in the third book that I have planned. And I was like, this is uncanny. So some weird things come up when, so that's why sometimes I feel like it's really weird because it's like a bit of, how did I find this painting? Why is this painting perfect? Um, but with the book, I collected all the paintings and had them all in a file and I was looking at them and thinking, which ones do I feel are going to serve the story best at this point in time, right? So um, I wanted to give like an overview of creatures. So I used the more classical ones, for example, in Westmore's. Westmore is Nicole's professor who has this manor with all the paintings in. And I was like, okay, how can I just kind of start with a general timeline of supernaturals and kind of therefore use these core creatures and find paintings that link to those. So I kind of had to pull back because obviously you can't include every painting ever, and there's so many gorgeous ones. Um, but deciding which ones definitely meant that I had to look at what the plot needs, what type of creatures these are, if any looked like the characters, like I say, and also ways that I could weave it in that wasn't talking about a particular painting in front of her, but she was referencing an art style, or this reminded her of something, to keep that kind of art knowledge in there. Um, so yeah, it was basically trying to pick, because also you can't have like loads of paintings in it for every clue either. Um, so I tried to pick the one that felt, especially in book one, the most dangerous and the most potent for the plot of book one. Like
Mm-hmm.
dangerous looking as well, because there are two at the start that she's like, this is the one I want to get, but this is the one that's actually got the clue in. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I feel like I
Yes.
rambled on that
No,
one.
no, it did. It did. It definitely did. And actually, it just made me realize. Let's actually talk about how do you organize yourself before you start writing a book?
um I have a Scrivener, so that's what I usually, when I'm like in the drafting stage, I really
Mm-hmm.
find Scrivener to be extremely helpful because you have, if you haven't, you've used it, but like for other people, yeah, you have all these kind of folders. It's like tabs in your document, and you can move things into the research section. It has notes section in every single page. So when I know that I'm going to like build a conspiracy, for example, I'll kind of set out those key things in a document and make sure that I'm charting it as accurately as I can or as easy as I can for the reader. But I don't know that my process is super wise because it seems kind of messy to other people, probably. Like, I currently have a ridiculous amount of tabs open. I have notes absolutely everywhere. I try and keep them to one page or one tab to know what I'm looking for, but then I don't. Because if a document gets like too much in it and it feels messy, my brain can't you know, hack it. So I have to split things up a lot. So I'm trying to think in terms of, but in terms of keeping everything straight, I'll kind of make a giant brainstorm document, and I'll also have a love list document. So on like a core ideas. So I'll separate things into, what did I originally want this to feel like? What are the key color palettes? So the color scheme of a book is something that comes to my mind usually. um, what are the core elements of the characters that I love? What are the core, not necessarily themes, but things the book is going to deal with? And I make sure that I have them written down at the start because a book goes through so many edits, so many iterations, especially if, I have some books that I started years and years and years ago and they're still not finished or they're still not right. So writing down my original idea and the way I wanted it to feel really helps me when you're then going through so many edits. Um, and then I'll have my brainstorm where everything goes. Sometimes I'll split it up into subsections for characters or, world building, descriptions. And then I'll kind of sit down with the plot beat sheet and be like, what needs to go where and what, you know, element, what surprise is going to be best, where does that need to be plotted, or what moment does this character need to have their worst moment. So I think that really helps structure the story before I begin, because I used to be very much a discovery writer, but I found that that was also because I personally didn't know a lot about craft at the time. So craft was so intimidating to me. I tried to read the craft books like John Truby, and I couldn't wrap my head around them. Thankfully, like now I'm like, okay, now I know what he's saying. But if you come to that when you're kind of starting out, it can be kind of confusing. So I actually found that I enjoyed craft more when I started looking more at romance novels, because I realized how based in character they were, and how amazing character is for not only making your book as unique as possible, because you really need to figure out who is this character, what is their weakness, um, and why has it shaped them? Why does that shape what they're going to do in the story? Um, but also in a romance, how they need to get over that weakness so they can be with that person. And it was something that really taught me so much about character. So now I definitely structure it as, then I'm going to do my plot beat sheet. But otherwise, it can look like a hell of a mess to other people, I feel. But I know where everything is. So again, referencing that board with all the mess on it. But also, I always need a Pinterest board. Absolutely. I
I
keep them
followed you.
secret. Yeah, oh, did you? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love my Pinterest board.
It's really nice, actually.
And
It's very
thank
good.
thank you. I love them because it also really helps me keep like the vibe straight in my head. What do I want this book to feel like? Um and also I think I when I'm thinking of scenes or when I'm writing, I'm very much a writer who kind of sees it as a movie. So the cinematography of the scene is important to me. If that feels off, then there's something wrong with the scene and I need to stop and fix it. Um, it can make a perfectly good scene feel wrong to me. So that really helps. So I'll always start off as well with a Pinterest board, and then slowly I'll build a playlist, because I do also find that super helpful. But that's pretty much how I begin. But I think the most important thing for me is always the, what do I love about this idea? And then, you know, also how can I make it as original as possible is another thing that I think is a great even just exercise to do for yourself, when you're coming up with something. Now, everything has been done before, as people like to say. And I think as well, when you're working on something that has real life influences, like from real myths or real cultures, there's someone else is gonna do it too, and it's just something that you kind of got to make your peace with, and just think, how am I gonna do this in a way that speaks to me, and then kind of share that and have faith in that version of the myth or the folklore, and why you wrote it that way.
Yeah, I can definitely, especially when I started reading your bio about how you studied art, I was like, I mean, I didn't know you, but I was like, I could feel her in the book more because I know
Yeah.
that that's like what she likes, Like it made it much better. And I think that's why Nicole, to me, even though I love art, but I have zero knowledge about art. And when in Nicole's head, I could feel that love of art and that knowledge of art constantly throughout, because it just felt like, and then I realized I was like, oh, it's because the author knows, like her stuff in this as well. Um,
Thank you. Well, that's yeah, I'm really happy with that. I think because obviously that's a funny thing as well when you're writing, is how much you want to be able to make the characters feel real, but you also want to be able to make sure that, I think that's where, like we say, like you can add the uniqueness, as if you can add something
mhm.
of you into the character, then hopefully that really makes them also stand out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of books in the world, there's a lot of fancy books, a lot of romancy books. So trying to make, um, I think putting that little piece of you, or your niche, your favorite thing, or your knowledge, or like, it can be anything, but
hmm
it just helps it kind of stand out, hopefully. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And that is what stood out to me. I was like, I don't know if I've read a character like this before. And I think that was one of the things that like intrigued me in it. I could feel her vibe right away.
Yeah. Oh, great,
um,
great.
so, actually, I did want to ask, does that mean, because you do so much research and the Pinterest board and the this, so when you write your first draft, do you find that you're actually not changing a lot for the second draft?
That's so I've written with another book I've written that I hope to have news on soon. Um,
Oh, like another series?
yes, yeah, a brand like an adult romance.
Oh.
Yes, with fantasy elements as well.
Mm-hmm.
But with that one, it was like first draft, first, so like it just worked. Like it, I'd done so much research, I plotted it out to a T. I knew those characters, so it really came out almost fully formed. But that had never happened to me before. So
No.
with that never happened to me before. Um, and then when I started writing book two, I knew that because when you get that first deal and you have like a contract and deadlines, and you know that there are going to be editors that are going to want to move things around a lot, or like, you know, for the first draft of the second book, I was like, this is going to be rough, and that's what we're going to send in, because then we can move the pieces around and make sure that it's right and that scene happens in the right place, or this character needs more development there, or you know is this giant piece of mythological thread needed in this book, or should we move it to the next book? So I think with this book particularly, I did like months of plotting beforehand, because the second book, it's not a spoiler to say that there are more real locations in the second book.
Mm-hmm.
So, real places to go, some more real art and artifacts this time. So it meant that I really had to plot and plan a lot, because there are also more POVs in book two. So it also was another case of there's so many more layers to the story that it took me ages to plot. But it's still a case where you'll send it in and things will still get moved around. So I think it definitely helps me end up with a book that's closer to being completed. But so far, since I've only figured out that real hack in the last few years, I haven't had the room to like write another one like that in a way that's great first time, I mean, it's rare to do that though. If your book isn't great on the first try, that does not mean it's bad. That does not mean there's anything wrong with you, or the idea. It just means that, and people say this a lot, but every book can be so different, and the process of writing it can be so different. So never be deterred if you're like, this is trash and I hate it and it feels wrong, and whatever. It honestly, it happens to us all. But I think for me, I found that then, doing those love lists and keeping a really clear vision of what you want to do and learning more about the craft means that then it just makes the process easier, because it also feels like you can spot those any potential issues earlier on, versus then when you've written the whole thing and then you feel like, oh no, there's still giant elements here. But like I say, that can happen in any draft. Like even in the second, even in book two draft, as I'm editing now, I'm like, okay, that thing needs to go, or that needs to be moved into book one. So yeah, I think that the more I write, hopefully the easier the prepping process will be. But like you
Mm-hmm.
say, it also depends on the scope of the project. If it has those real or historical elements in, I think that the hard part is the historical bits, because um, you've really got to know a lot to make sure it's going to make sense and also impact the character in a logical way.
I want to touch more a little bit on when you say that you have a very clear vision and kind of vibe and aesthetic
Hmm.
of your story. I did find that I've never been to where the location took place, but I've been, as I was telling you before we started, that I've been to the UK before in general, and with my very limited knowledge of it, I could kind of sense the vibe. I kind of was getting in it. You were describing it so well that I can picture kind of what, like, I could picture what you were talking about, you know?
Mhm.
So how would you describe your writing style? It's very, like, flowy, but
Thank
okay,
you.
sure.
Yeah, um I think with my writing style, it's definitely commercial. So like
Mhm.
I hope accessible. Um
Yeah, yeah, it's very
and
easy to follow.
sometimes yeah, and sometimes that can mean if someone says a book is commercial, often means that the writing can be a bit plainer, right? So it's like you're just laying out the scenes. You don't need the frills or the the purple prose or the flowery elements or anything like that. But I think with my books, what I try to do is make sure that, like you say, the aesthetic and the vibe is very clear, but also that we have enough of a sense of place, and especially in Estwood, I really wanted it to be a place where you would want to go, that I would want to live. That was like my ideal place. Obviously, not with the creatures that's going to kill me, but with the feeling of the not only the aesthetic, but the way Nicole feels in the location as well. And I think that does impact how some of it is written. But I like to have enough detail that, especially with anything that feels magical, like a painting or an artifact, you can really not only do you then understand what I'm talking about and like what it looks like, but you get a sense of like the magical side of it and how it feels magical. So I definitely think that I like to add that more like a very slight purple element, but other books that I will write in the future, I would like to have more of that prose in it. But I think for this series as well, because there was so much about it that um, is built from scratch and in a supernatural way that people really needed to be able to understand. I knew that if I went too far into like language or flowery elements, that people might get a little bit lost with that on top of then a whole world and then these new creatures. So I definitely wanted to keep it on the commercial side, but with sentences that you'd kind of that I would have wanted to underline or here and there
Mhm.
sprinkled through, like because sometimes then I find this, and I think if a writer's ever worried that they don't feel their writing's like pretty enough or like that they've got those elements in or they're worried about that, what I tend to remember is that sometimes it literally takes two sentences in the entire book, and I will remember that book for that line. So you don't need it on every page. You certainly don't need it in every paragraph, because it also can affect, like you say, the flow of the reading. If there's a lot of that, sometimes it can feel slower. Whereas I think that's why sometimes more commercial writing is so widely gobbled up, and like people fly through it because you're not taking that time to kind of linger in the descriptions in the same way. But yeah, I think sometimes it's reassuring to remember you only need a few great lines of those elements, those magical feelings, and that kind of flowery prose to make an impact. But it also just depends on the style of writer that you want to be. I think, like I say, for me, for this one, I wanted it to have a few little like nice pieces. But other books that I write in the future, I'd want to kind of do that more, and they definitely have more of a. It's called like upmarket, I think, when um, it's not literary, it's not commercial, but the style is going to have more of the purple element. So I'd
Mhm.
like to do that at some point, but yeah,
I also wanted to ask you about the fact that this particular book is both, it's like you describe it as upper YA and lower NA. And I find that interesting because I also would describe your book that way, but I think it's more because the industry has no idea where they want the cutoff to be. And especially
yeah,
now that NA wasn't a thing, as we all know. NA was only really for like college romances way back then. And it's now a thing, but we don't know what
yeah.
that thing is. So
Hmm.
why would you like why do you particularly think this is like falls into like that in betweeny sort of ambiguous place?
So for me, I because one of the big themes in the book is impulses. So the impulse to transform and kill, in a deadly way, but also I knew that I wanted to explore the romance in a slightly older way. The doors don't close, it doesn't fade to black. And that was a very purposeful that was a very purposeful action on my behalf,
Mm-hmm.
because when I was reading, I remember to this day when I was reading Twilight and Breaking Dawn, and it got to the first sex scene, and then they didn't, it just didn't. Ex- I remember sitting there reading it and being like, but wait, what does it feel
Mm-hmm.
like, or what actually happens here, or like, can I just like give me a little bit more, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that when I wrote mine, I didn't want the reader to be thinking, but what happens there, or you know, and especially because Nicole's 18 going on 19. So this is that age of you are going off to university and you are experiencing first times, whether you did previously, when you're younger than 18, it happens as well. But obviously, because of the age categories, and like you say, with a new adult, it's so frustrating. And it's been so frustrating for so long, I think, for a lot of writers, because and for a lot of readers, we want those type of stories, but we keep being told there's just nowhere to put them, or there's no shelf for them to sit on. And so suddenly they can either skew really, really sexual and quite erotic, which again, nothing wrong with. That's great to read too. But I really, because I knew that the story, and I think what makes up YA is the coming of age. Like everyone says this, to try and figure out the difference between your like adult novel and your YA novel, it used to be coming of age. But now, because I think we've got more stories like Fourth Wing and Akatar that are they're 19-year-old characters, and they're still coming into their coming of age but it's obviously in an older way, right? They're learning about their magic or their society, and they're having first times or more intimate relationships that we get to read the details of. So I think also because for me, I never wanted we and I find this sometimes, I think that's just why my personal preference is, maybe the spicier romances and things like this, because if we're so in the character's mind in every single way in the rest of their life, and then you close the door on the scene that is arguably the most important in the entire book
Yeah.
for that character, for that experience, it always feels like, I don't know, like something's being taken, or like we're just, why is that door closing? So I think as well, because it's such a normal thing, um, you know, it's the way life continues. It's the way
Yeah.
life began. Like it's not. So I also didn't want it to have any type of, um, I didn't want to hide that. I wanted us to be with Nicole while she was experiencing some very big deals in her life and not shying away from the intimacy of it, and the details. I was like, I want to know how this kiss feels. I want to know how that feels. I want to know how this experience feels. And I really want to sit with her while she goes through them. Um, and so that's when I was like, but therefore, this is definitely a book that I would class as upper YA or new adult. Now, if it was a new adult, I would have written it differently. I would have aged her up a bit more, but that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't possible for the age category. Like you say, the age category wasn't there. So I was like, if I'm going to keep this YA, I want her to have these experiences. And I think as well, because she's a character that has so much to do with her family and her siblings and like those elements, that also felt more YA to me. Whereas if I was going to age her up, I'd probably, I don't know, it would be a completely different story. So it's like, I definitely think this is a YA story, but it's upper to new adult. And not a lot of people phrase theirs as upper to newer adult, upper YA to newer adult. But I felt like I just wanted to be clear for people so they didn't feel like they were getting like a weird surprise or. But I think also sometimes the clue is in um the blurb and the situation. If a character is 18 and in uni, it's going to be something that it's not really for the younger readers. And I think that's one of the troubles with the age category of YA, because it is from like 14 or 13
It's
to 18.
so massive.
It's
It
huge. And
it's
so
huge.
you can't write for everyone
Mhm.
in that age category. It's just not possible. And you can't write for anyone. You can't write for everyone all anyway. in general.
Mhm.
So I think that's something that I think sometimes I wish that we could like have more of a chat with like industry people and be like, but how can we like do can we do something about this? Like, can we should we
Yeah,
split them up? Can we just introduce the new adult category again? Like, what can we do about this? But I do
yeah.
feel like, in a way, I almost feel like the new adult category isn't necessary anymore because they're still being bought and made now. You know, like again, like I'll go back to the Fourth Wing example, but that's very clear as a new adult. It reads sometimes very YA. Like when I read it, I was like, oh, this is a YA book. But then people were like, no, 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 just read on and you'll see why it's not.
Mhm.
But it's great that those are being bought by adult fiction publishers, but you can still write the character who's 19 going on 20. And
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's why I called it that. I didn't want to hide things from the reader, but I also wanted to, because this is a book about growing up and becoming a woman for her, become having these first experiences, um, not to spoil anything. So yeah, that's why I made that decision.
Mhm.
Because also
And
it's
I'm
a book I
glad.
wanted to read. Like
Yeah, and I'm
if
glad
I'd have been,
I at that age.
mm,
Yeah, I remember when it was getting no spoilers, but it was when it was getting to her experiences, I was like, I don't know why I start I don't know why, because I do like YA and I read plenty of YA. But I don't know with yours in particular, I started to panic that you were gonna close the door. I don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
why. I was like, she's about to do it. She's about to do it. I don't know why I started to panic and I was like, don't do it. Please don't do it. And you didn't. And I was like, oh, okay. We're
Yeah, no, I'm
good.
exactly the same. I'm like, no, don't, because I read something recently and I was like, oh, they're getting, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then it didn't happen the way I thought it would happen, or it didn't have the level of detail I thought it was gonna have. And I found myself like weirdly disappointed. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and it kind of like, now obviously everyone's different. Some people don't want to read the details, some people do. And I think that's the great thing about having so many books is we can have this great variation. But I just like to, as the author, try and be as open as possible about what material is going to be in the book because then oh, okay, that's going to be something that I want to read, or I can just skim those pages and that's fine as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought yours was pretty like for anyone out there who's like still debating or like who hasn't read your book yet or whatever. I would say that it was a good amount of like you feel satisfied to the lead up and stuff. But it's not. It doesn't go to like erotica.
Yes,
So it's
no,
a
I think
good
that's the
amount.
key with also
Yeah.
like the word choices is very purposeful. Like being
Mm-hmm.
very explicit in your word choices is going to make it an older book. So we don't have those like super explicit words in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And finally, I want to go to my little miscellaneous section here. Just a little fun section. I You wrote a blog in 2023 that
Oh
I
no.
read. I did. You titled "What I Know About Writing" in parentheses so far.
Hmm.
So I actually pulled out some quotes, and I thought I would base our questions based on the quotes from
Okay.
your blog. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I'm
So
scared.
no, 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 don't be scared. Well, no, okay. So you're right. You're the one you should be satisfying with your writing, no one else. So, what is the most satisfying part to you about the story?
About this story?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a really hard question. I think um okay, there's two. Can I say two? Um,
Go for it.
yeah, so there's two elements. There's actually one scene that is the most satisfying to me, which is in a forest, and I won't explain what it is. But that kind of moment is one of my favorite things. And then my other favorite thing is Nicole and Kian as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Why they work, how they get there, if they get there, because that's also, Um, but I think, yeah, with this book, I definitely wanted to fill it with a lot of my favorite things. And one of the other ones is the positive family dynamic. That was something that
Mm-hmm.
was another thing that I was reading, and I was like, oh, I really, because I have a great family. Like I love my family; they're the best people in the world. And so I really wanted to make sure that um, there weren't going to be, in my book, like, I just really wanted to have that great dynamic and that the characters were open with one another. They could go to one another. They could talk about things. They weren't going to necessarily do things behind the father's back, or like those
Mm.
type of elements. So I think with this one, there's the core of what Nicole is and how, like, those impulses. There's her romance with Kian, and then there's the family dynamic. But basically, like, I tried to fill it with as much things as I loved as possible.
All right. You write. Write like you're using a pen name. I want to know
Mm.
if Nicole and Kian had a pen name, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. I think Nicole will probably try and pick something that's like art, like an art reference.
Mhm.
Um, like, well, a pen name though. Oh, that's so good. Maybe I should try and use art in it. Should be like um NP art or something. Something like that where she gets that's terrible.
Yeah.
But like, or she'd probably reference a masterpiece or like a famous artist and use their name, but like,
Mhm.
you know, swap it around. I think with Kian, if he was to write anything, bless him, I think he'd probably he'd probably use like the most plain name in the world. He'd call himself like John Smith and be like, I don't know, whatever. He'd be like, I don't really, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he'd probably just be like, my name's John Smith. Here, take this. Yeah, probably.
Love me some John Smith over here.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Write your book. No, write your own book like you're writing fan fiction of it. So now I
Hmm.
need to know you have to have written fan fiction.
I haven't. I
You
actually
haven't.
haven't. No. So I didn't even, this is crazy, but I didn't even know fan fiction was a thing until like a few years ago, I swear. Like I think because I remember thinking, but how does that work? Like that's someone, because at first I was like, but isn't that sounds dramatic, but I was like, isn't that illegal? Like that's someone
It,
else's book. But then
it
I
is if you sell
realized,
it, yes.
exactly, I was like, yeah, if you
Yeah.
sell it, it's illegal. But like, um it's actually like people can do that, and like
Yeah.
then I learned about AO3 and these sites, and like it's a great opportunity to like it
Yeah.
also like kind of practice writing, like you using the so yeah, no, I actually have never written. I've read a bit of it now,
Mm.
mainly
What
because
kind?
I discovered that Ali Hazelwood had come from fan
Oh
fiction, so I was
yeah. Yeah.
like, I need to find this. So be careful if you look that. But I was like, yeah, no, I didn't know that. But I think for me, because I wanted to get that in my head when I was thinking, um, when I was kind of stuck on the edge of, because I think for myself as a writer, I want to go into adult, um, just as a age category. I think it's somewhere
Yeah.
that kind of, that's where I want to be now. That's the type of stories I want to tell. So
Mhm.
it was also to try and give myself permission to be like, if you could write anything, what would it be? And maybe to help unlock that in me, like maybe there's something in me that's kind of scared to do that. Just imagine you have a pen name so that no one would know. And if no one knew, what would you do? If and
Yeah.
I think that's quite a freeing exercise to give yourself when you're stuck, or you're not sure if you're liking what you're writing, or you're not sure you're writing in the right age genre, or anything like that. So I think that's a useful tool if you're
Yeah.
getting a bit stuck, and to figure out who you are and what you like as a writer,
Yeah.
which
And
is
I
crucial.
do, yeah, I do think there's something to be said when you want to write certain things, but then you're afraid, like, well, what will my family think? What
Yeah,
will my coworkers think? Like, what will, all these people
absolutely.
think? So
Yeah,
I
because
do think,
I have that problem with it's not a problem, but my nana is a voracious reader and she reads all my books. And I'm like, at one point in one other book, in the adult romance book, I gave her the book and she was just like, maybe you should add this to the sex scene. I was like,
oh my
I was like, Nana, we can't do this, okay? I take it
God,
back. I was shocked by the
Nana! Oh my God.
suggestions. Um, but but I was also like, so on the one hand, I'm like, you know what, my nana wouldn't be shocked by anything. But I think I would want to kind of I totally agree. Like sometimes if we know that people like our friends would read it or like our parents or whatever, and we're like nervous about that, I definitely think that's another, it can block us, you know,
Yeah.
creatively. So it's like it's really important to try and get through that block and be like, look, if a pen name is the best thing for you, do it. Just do what you can to crack open like your true desires as a writer. And I think that's something I've struggled with, but also I've noticed that the people who become the most successful, and I noticed this with stories like V. Schwab says the book that she just was like her kind of screw it book was
Mhm.
Vicious, and that made her career, like started her career
Mhm.
properly. Like she'd written before that, but she was kind of really struggling. And also the other one is, and I was in an interview with her, Kristen Ciccarelli, and she said for her, Crimson Moth was her kind of screw it
Mhm.
book. She was like, I'm just going to do what I love here. And I think that always seems to be the book that gets the, you know, gets your career going, or just really feels like it finds the people that it needs to find. So I think, yeah, doing whatever you can, even if it's like when you're in the document, you can have a different name at the top, or, you know, written
Yeah.
by pen name, and
I mean,
just feel free,
yeah.
and written by John Smith, and just feel free to, you know, write whatever you really want to write. Like no
Yeah.
one's gonna read it.
That's true. I did when I started my first time starting writing was fan fiction.
Oh, was it?
It was Harry Potter, it was the Marauders.
Oh,
And
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
fully 100% I I would write a character based on me, myself, and I that
Yes.
would with Sirius Black, who was my bad boy in school, and
Hmm.
I was like I was the love interest, of
Uh-huh,
course.
of course.
So there's something to be said about that, like anonymity, where you're just like, I can do whatever I want here, because who will know?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
But it's funny because I've also noticed like some other books that sometimes I feel like are very um like self-insert for the
Yeah,
author also tend to do extremely well. You know, like it's, I think because some kind of magic happens when the author feels like really in love with the story, really connected to it, whether it's because they feel like they're the one in the main character's seat, or, you know, it's just that they're allowing themselves to write whatever they want. It does really, people can feel it in a positive way. I think readers really pick up in a positive way.
and well, that's what I was saying about yours. I was like, I could feel that you knew, you weren't pretending that you knew about art because you wanted the story. Like you actually knew about it, you know.
Yeah,
And that's
I think I tried to get like knowledge in, but I then tried to make sure that Nicole was very different to me. You know, I knew that I was like, if I was going to build a character as my, because again, I wrote her when I was like 16, 17. I was
mm-hmm.
like, well, she's going to have dark hair and dark eyes. But she has to be different to me.
Yeah,
And that was where a bulk of her kind of character work came in, of like, who is this character, you know, but how can I layer in things I know about to her to make her feel like a real person, but that
yeah.
she's unique enough that she's her own character.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I definitely think that's a great way to start, and it's also a great way to show you like what you like. Um,
Yes.
so
Yeah. I'm a huge advocate for fan fiction. Honestly, like a huge, even if you don't want to post it anywhere,
mm,
um, though I do think you should because you get that instant sort of like,
yeah,
you know, I had someone when the first time I wrote a post on fan fiction, I didn't know English. So what was I writing? I have no idea. I was also writing a romance. I was 10. What romance? I don't know. But
impressive.
impressive, although probably gibberish. But first post that I made, somebody actually grabbed it, and instead of tearing me to shreds and being like, "You are a horrible writer," and what is happening, they actually took it and they fixed it for me. And they were like, "Here you go. I think you need to add some descriptions, Mo." But I literally saved that, and every time I would write a new one, I would reference to that and be
That's
like, am I writing
amazing.
the right descriptions? Am I writing? And that was how I learned. And so I think it could be
Wow.
such a great, yeah, it's such a great way to like learn about what you like, what you need, and your writing style.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think as well
Mhm.
because with publishing, it's such a long process and it can be
Yeah.
kind of a lonely process, especially if you don't have any writing friends or, or that you don't have access to particular courses or whatever, and you don't really know like what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. And also because then you do have some experience with a readership and like you
Mhm.
get the gratification of someone reading it and enjoying it other than yourself. So that's amazing.
Yeah. All right, moving on to next quotes. Don't think that I don't have more quotes.
Okay.
You say, write out a love list for your new project, and you mentioned it throughout our conversation. I absolutely love that. What was your love list for this story?
Oh, I think a lot of it was kind of things like paranormal romance. So some of it's like kind of a broad thing. Um,
Like truth and stuff.
yeah, like True Blood or to be honest, and it's some of it is really obscure because I can never describe it even to this day. There's this one perfume that I used to wear, and whenever I smell it, it reminds me of Nicole and like this book and this feeling. So I had this perfume name written down. Um, I have things like the color palette. So for me, like dark red and black and um like all tones from like white to black, so we go through all the like creams, browns, etc. I think because that is very like dark academia palette to me, like all the brown tones, but also for Kian, very very deep dark green, for the druid element of his past,
Mm.
but also things like things that Nicole might wear, or the coastal imagery, or um, keywords, which things like crescent moon, or um, gold frame, or just kind of key things that can kind of ground me and remind me what they are. I'll actually see if I've got any on my thing here. Let's see. I think they might only be in my actual document.
Mm.
Um, yeah, okay. Core words and vibes. Here it is: mythology, impulses, supernatural, wild hunt, art history, longing, intellect, bloodied fist, elegance, vicious main character. So, things like supernatural, antiquities, Celtic, vain, these kind of words that kind of trigger my
Yeah.
mind and like make me so they're like a tiny little sample of the vibe of the book, and I think that for me makes the feel of the book very clear. So then, like I say, if I'm getting stuck or an editor's giving me a note of like, let's have another scene like this here, but I don't know what it should look like or feel like, that helps a lot.
Yeah. I love that. I'm gonna steal that if you don't mind.
You should definitely, because I think I first saw it because I do think I referenced her in that blog post, but Laini Taylor's blog post called "Not for
Mm-hmm.
Robots." Highly recommend everyone read it because I think that's where I might have even seen that of like just list your favorite things.
Yeah.
But then I started doing it for each project to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. But it's a really helpful tool.
Laini Taylor has a really unique writing style as well.
Gorgeous.
Very, yes. You write you write to make a to you advise to make a Pinterest board
Hmm.
or a playlist. So can you give me some keywords to what is Nicole's Pinterest and playlist and what is Kian's?
So Nicole's Pinterest board is again a lot of those colors. So like the red, the deep dark, like blood colored red.
Mm-hmm.
We've got like old books and um, dark hair and some of the clothes that she might wear. Um, but also, I'm trying to think. I'm like picturing it in my mind. I
Those
shortened the
ones
amount.
had like a photo. She was like in the
Yeah,
library and had like a little book.
Yeah, so I think some of those type of, but a lot of like girls in galleries, like a girl's
Mm-hmm.
silhouette in front of a painting or whatever. That's like classic kind of Nicole, but also then like the bloodied fist element, or like the almost vampire like shots, because like we
Mm-hmm.
say, like her power isn't gentle. And then for her playlist, I have some Da Vinci Code on there. I have some um Massive Attack on there. I love them. Like I used to listen to them. I think because they were in those older shows and movies, I was obsessed with
Mm.
them. And Paradise Circus is another like band that's on there. So kind of like sultry paranormal songs for Nicole. And then for Kian's board, it's a lot of kind of those um, Irish landscapes, like the Isle of Skye features on there. So kind of really kind of jagged cliffs and
Hmm.
like a black coffee and nothing else. And, you know, like,
Very John Smith of him.
right? Can't be distinguishable by his coffee order.
Yeah.
Um, and also his hair, quite short, dark hair because it's one of his
Mm.
characteristics that he never lets his hair grow, for reasons. And yeah, and so kind of like also things like his like travel bag because or a car because he's always like on the go and like on a mission or muscles. That's another thing that's on the board.
That's my
And
favorite
then
thing.
yeah, and it's a fundamental thing about Kian. And
Yeah.
then with his playlist, it's yeah, a lot more of those. There's one song, I'll get it up actually. Where is it? Um, I think it's like it's in a lot. It was in what was it in? Oh, Run Boy Run by Woodkid. It's one of the songs I think a lot of about with am I making any sense? When I think of Keane, I think of that song, especially when he was a kid, like when he was a child. But also there's a song called "The Devil and the Huntsman" from the King Arthur movie. That's
Mhm.
one that I see with him. So his is a lot more like things from Outlander or kind of like intense songs or like Irish
Yeah.
songs. So that's something that they're very particular. And then I have ones for Bells, Dylan, Remy, Ronan, literally everyone. Um, because I think it just really helps to treat each character like they're the main character.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of work, but it is always it's always worth it.
Yeah. Because it feels like they're very full characters. They're very, very full
Thank you.
characters.
Thank you.
You write. Make sure your mouth is full before you start. So, what did you want to say with this story? Like, what was that thing that you were like, I need to get it out?
Well, when I say that, it also means because I find it when if I don't read enough, my mouth is like
Yeah.
empty. And so I think it's because when I'm not reading a lot, I also find my vocabulary can dwindle to basically nothing. So I'll be writing very plain language, I'll be
I know
writing just
exactly what you mean, actually.
right? Yes.
Yes.
So I'll be like, I can't write until my mouth is full of
Yeah.
I've read enough stuff that I feel like the flow is in my mouth. Like it's not in your mouth, you're not
Hmm.
saying it, but like I suppose you could say to it's in feels like your fingers are like ready to go or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I mean with that is like if I haven't read enough and I feel really kind of like stagnant, um, and
Hmm.
it's literally just a case of vocabulary. Like it's not looking at the stories, but it's thinking to yourself like, do all the words in my head? Do I have an idea of how to write the scene? And if you don't, stop and read as much as you can. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think I read more kind of or I'd like to read more of the purple prosy books. I think purple prose is kind of like a bit of a mean word though. So I don't mean it that way if that's what it is. But just more of the beautiful language. Like for example, there's a book I'm reading at the moment called Things in Jars by Jess Kidd, and my sister recommended it to me. The way she writes is amazing. And we mentioned Laini Taylor and she's very similar of like the way she'll craft a sentence and the things she'll
Yeah.
think to mention. And I think it's really good to just make sure that you're reading types of books like that if that's kind of the way
Yeah.
you want to write. Not because you're ever pinching things, but because you're feeling like, oh yeah, like that word exists. Or like that's the,
Yeah.
like there's this kind of flow to things because otherwise you end up saying the same thing. And like all the time. So I think it definitely helps like get your mouth full by reading plenty. But with this book, I especially wanted to say that it's okay to be who you are and try not to be afraid of that. And really try and honor that that's what you are and that's who you are, and like don't be afraid, because
Yeah.
there's a consequence for her to be herself. And I think that's something that, even though in her instance it's a very supernatural thing, it's something that literally we all deal with. um
Yeah.
even if it's like just I don't feel like I can write that even though I really want to, or I don't feel like I can be that way or dress that way, or like whatever it is, like just try and give yourself a little bit more permission to just be what you want to be. Is kind of what I wanted,
Yeah.
is Nicole's big thing. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I wanted to say with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. On a random note, do you hear the work being done outside my house?
Yes.
Is it super distracting?
It's fine for me.
It's
I
okay.
can
Is it
hear.
not? It's not super super loud, right?
It's quite loud, but
It
it's
is.
okay.
I literally like the chances that
It's
out of
okay. It's okay.
they would be working right outside my window. The chances of this happening right now. I have a few more. Dear God, how much do you want to bet though? The moment that you and I stop talking,
Oh yeah,
they'll be done. They'll be
they'll
done.
be done.
Like what? I see the leaves are blowing outside my window right now. What is happening? Oh, anyway, all right. A few more, and then I'll let you go.
Don't worry.
Okay, so you say romanticize being a writer. I love this because I actually romanticize. Whenever
Yay!
I write, I'm either in this room or I go to a cafe and I will dress up. Like I will full.
Good.
Oh my god,
Mm.
are they moving
They're
on?
moving
I will.
on. They're moving
I
on.
think so. I think so. Let's not jinx it. But like I will fully dress up and I will be like, I am light academia today. I am dark. I will like work little corsets and stuff. So I want to know, how do you romanticize being a writer?
For me, I actually think of, there are two fictional characters that I always love, and one is um, Diane Keaton's character in Something's Gotta Give. I always get the two names in the movies mixed up. But whenever she's like sat with her desk, like she's a playwright in the book,
Yeah,
and she's like an older woman. She's like this famous playwright, and she's gone to the Hamptons to write her next play, and the story unfolds from there. But just like the montages of her writing,
yeah,
I love a good montage. Like in anything, I love a montage. So when the character is like, like sat there like typing away, and like the
yes,
camera's like going around them, and like
yes. And they're
the
like ripping up
times,
pages. They have the pencil for
yeah,
some reason. Yes, yes.
yeah, and like they're like going through the pages, or like
Yes.
there's this moment when she finishes the book, and she goes like, yes, like she throws her arms
Yeah.
up. And when I finished my romance book, I did that, and I recorded myself doing the same thing. So I was like, that's how I want to feel every time I
Yeah.
finish a book, like, because it's such a journey. So I try, and I didn't do that when I finished book two. I think because I knew it had a lot of work. So I feel like when I'm like, okay, I've got it, then I'll do my arm up thing. So I always try and think of her, but I also I loved the show Castle. I don't know if you ever saw it, and he's the writer, and he helps like a detective. He's a crime
Yes.
writer.
I
Yeah,
love that show. Yes, yes.
I love that show, and
Yes.
so I tend to think of him as well. And it just, though, again, like there aren't a lot of scenes when he's writing, but sometimes he will write, and the shots of him writing just really
Yeah.
inspiring to me, or even just like a close up of someone's fingers typing. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
like, I wanna look like, but the problem is I don't dress up. So I just have no makeup and greasy hair and mismatched pajamas every day of my life.
Well,
So
that's how I look when I write in here.
yeah.
Like when I'm writing here, but I do like to give. I have a little light that gives me like a spotlight, like I can change colors. And
Ooh.
I'll be like,
Yeah.
and I'll have my tea, and I'll be like, I'm a writer. But when I go out into a cafe, I want to be like I'm in, like a Hallmark movie rom com or
Absolutely.
something like that. You know what I mean?
I think that
Yeah.
definitely helps. Like when I was in uni, I used to have like this. hour when I could work between certain classes, and it was my favorite time of the day. And I would get myself, yeah, like you go and get your coffee, or I think I used to drink mochas for a while, and
Mm.
I loved that time of day. But yeah, for me, it will be. I tend to romanticize it more if I like make an active attempt to like record myself working,
Mm.
for like a TikTok or whatever. Like I'd like to do more of that though. So I also made it a bit of like a not a resolution, but I was like, I want to do my hair a bit more. I want to put on like a different, wear a robe or something while I'm writing, and like,
Oh yeah.
just something that, because one of my favorite things is like the old swoony romance book covers.
Mhm.
If I could ever have that vibe of like a romance writer in my head, like, where's her robe?
Oh, oh, I am sorry. It just like stopped recording. Oh no. Oh wait. All right. So we had a little bit of technical issues, but we are back, and we're gonna just pick up where we left off. Okay. So you write five senses, comma, woman, exclamation point. You made sure. So I want you to describe your book in five senses.
Oh no, what have you done? Okay. Oh, five senses. So we got touch. I'd probably go with um this sounds weird, but like hot skin. So like touching someone's skin and it's warm. That's what we'll say for
Mm-hmm.
touch. For scent, I'm gonna go with sea salt and wildflowers. Um, because I'm thinking like when they're out in Estwood a lot, that would be the scent. For sight, um, I'm gonna say, a gallery, like the glint of the gold on the oil paintings, on the frames, and the way the light reflects slightly off like daubs of paint, and the way
Mm-hmm.
the varnish goes over it. And then what even are my other senses? See, this is why I wrote this to myself. So wait, we've got
We had touch, we
touch,
had sight,
smell,
we had smell, we
taste,
need taste.
taste. Oh, okay. I'm gonna go with like a creamy coffee. Like a nice creamy coffee that you can kind of
Okay.
have with like a great stacked sandwich or like a fresh cookie, something like that. Like nice coffee. And then
Mm-hmm.
what is the last one? What are we missing?
Oh, hold on. Wait, no. Pause. This is embarrassing. Hold on. Touch,
I can't
smell.
even think.
Hold on. Touch, sight, smell, taste, uh, hearing. Uh,
Hearing.
yes.
Um, what can we hear in this book? I'm gonna just go. It sounds more vampire-y, but I'm gonna say heartbeat. Um,
Mm,
so yes.
I like
Also,
that.
because it's kind of like love and romance is like a theme of the book. So there we go. I shall say heartbeat. There you
Yeah. Okay, I had notable quotes that I didn't exactly have questions for, but I thought it was worth mentioning.
go. Okay.
From your 2023 blog, you write, "Writing is magic."
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. And only write what feels right, and that means a lot. Like I was like, yes, okay,
Yeah,
yes. I like that a lot.
that's a
I
good
did
one.
want to ask, have you learned anything new since?
Ooh, I think I've learnt more about character. So I don't know how much in that blog. I actually don't know how much I reference the book "Romancing the Beat." I think I do maybe somewhere, but it's. Do I have it here? I think I got it here. Yeah, here it is. "Romancing the Beat."
Mm,
This book is by Gwen Hayes, and it's basically it talks about romance beat sheets, like plotting a romance book and like rom coms. But this book taught me so much about character and put it into like fun, quick, like just the most digestible way to explain how to like build a character in a romance. Because in a romance book, the usually in your fantasy book you've got your main character and then you've got your antagonist, right? But in a
mm,
romance, the love interest basically takes the role of the antagonist. So the antagonist always has to put pressure on the character's wound or like fear or inaccurate belief about the world or themselves, and that is the character constantly has to have this pushed and pressed throughout the story to help them develop. And in a romance, that's the same thing. Like they have this wound, this reason that they believe that they can't be in love or they can't fall in love, and the love interest kind of has to be pressing this wound through the entire process. So I find this book is probably the number one thing that I've learned, and I love it. Um, and yeah, I think it also taught me, because basically everything, every genre needs character. It
Mm-hmm.
needs a good establishment of no matter what genre you're going to write. Um, so getting to know your character on a basis that isn't like, things that like what's their favorite color or things like this. Like try and really get to grips with why they move through the world the way they do, or
Mm-hmm.
what is holding them back, and what do they need to get over so that they can achieve the success at the end of the book. So yeah, definitely character. And this book, I need to reread it to be honest, because I read it a really long time ago, and I can tell that because of the pink sticky tabs that I no longer use, because I now have those fancy ones with um the ones that everyone has, and half of them is clear and the end is like a
Oh,
color.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas
I
back
got
then I didn't know those existed, so I just
it.
used these little crappy ones. But they did the job. So yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
characters, and also the fact that character, there is an endless amount of um, ways you can write a character and types of character that you can come up with. It's not
Mm-hmm.
as, I think sometimes we think of the kind of archetypes of characters to write,
Yeah.
whereas it's like what is this person's personality? And it's really helpful to sometimes look at the people in your own life and be like, what is their wound? Not in a way that you ever tell them or like point it out or try and get them to fix that. But and also in yourself, like what is your wound? Why do you what is a limiting belief or a fear that you have or desires, and how does that dictate the way you dress or the way you show up for yourself or the way you speak, or those type of things. And because everyone is so unique, I think that bringing that into a character is one of the things that makes a book really memorable, and for me makes a book really stand out. Because if I'm reading a book and they're saying the same things someone else said in that other book, or they're an archetype and nothing more, that can
Mm-hmm.
sometimes feel a bit like, why aren't I, really meshing with this character? Sometimes I think archetype characters can be great because we do, as a reader, then put ourselves into that character, so we
Mm-hmm.
feel more like, hey, this could be me, because it's
Mm-hmm.
in a way it's a bit of a shell for the reader to come into. But I tend to like it when a character has like those just use little unique things that make them feel like, oh, this person could be real. um
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that book, number one recommendation, even if you don't write romance.
Which I do.
Good.
Or I'm attempting to
Then even
do.
better. Yes.
Just trying. I do. I
I'm
do
sure you're doing
love.
great.
Yeah. I well. I will. I like. I'm gonna keep that in mind. That the love interest is now the antagonist who is like pressing on the wounds. I really like that,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm gonna keep that. That was a really good one. Like the moment you said it, I was like,
Oh my, yeah.
wow.
I know. I was the same, because I think that's also one of the things that is sometimes where, if that's not clear enough in like a rom-com, like the old,
Mhm.
because it feels like they don't really do like rom-com movies anymore. But in the older movies, if that wasn't clear, then the whole breakup beat, because this also goes through like the beats of a rom-com. So
Yeah.
obviously in a fantasy book, it's like the battle, or it's the big conflict, or the as they call it, the dark night of the soul, when everything's just
Mhm.
gone wrong, and this is the moment they're at rock bottom and they need to like figure out how to fix it, by conquering their inner demon or their limiting belief. And the same is in the romance books. So yeah, it's such a great book, and it's tiny. It's only tiny, so it's not
Yeah.
like you can sit down and read that in like 2 hours and make some notes. It's great.
Thank you. Appreciate that
No, of
recommendation.
course, I tell everyone, because I'm like, everyone should read this.
Okay, well, I only have one more question left, and it's
Mhm.
you talked about first of all book two of the Temptation of Magic, but also another one. What can you say about anything? Book two about the temptation, what to expect, when to expect it, and then if you can say anything about your new project as well.
Ooh, so I think with Temptation 2, I can tell you that currently it is scheduled for early 2026.
Okay.
Like we say, because of those long lead times behind the scenes, and we want to make it the best it can be. And I can tell you that though we will definitely be getting like cover reveal, title reveal. I'll be able to do quotes, things like that later in the year. I could probably tell you the title. If you want to, this would be the first time anyone's heard the title.
Oh my
Shall I
god,
tell
yes.
you?
Oh my god,
Yes.
is this my
This is
first?
an exclusive.
The first one.
That makes me feel like I would be cool enough to give an exclusive. But
I
yeah,
mean,
okay, here we go.
this makes me feel cool enough to get an exclusive. Like that was cool.
Yeah, so the title of book two is A Masterpiece in Blood.
Oh my god,
Mm. So I'm
I
hoping I'll
like
be able to
that.
announce it officially soon. But yeah, I think because it's such a while, like I'm gonna sprinkle. I'm gonna sprinkle that.
Yeah.
So and yeah, obviously there's two more books in the series. I think again, if the series ever found its home with readers and things like that, I'd be able to then maybe write some spin-offs that I would like to do. Um, but I don't know about that.
Okay,
But
if you
because
were
there's,
allowed to, can you tell me who you would?
well, yeah, well, I
You
would
don't have
do
to tell me
one.
why you would.
No, yeah, I
Just
can say there's a character coming in to book two who
okay.
I am planning to do a spin-off on. Kind of regardless. I'm like, if they don't buy this, I'll go elsewhere and sell it. Like, I want to do this one.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, I would really want to do a prequel, actually, of Kian. So Kian's life, Kian transforming for the first time, meeting Callum, being inducted into the wake,
Yeah.
interwoven with like Freya's history and like maybe scenes with her. And there's another mysterious character that comes into book two who I would have in that. So I'm already writing that one because it's kind of like a figuring out book.
Mm,
It helps me figure out where he's at, what's happened to him. But there's so much material that it's like this is like a
could
book
be, yeah.
a book long.
Yeah.
And then with my romance, what I can probably say is that it is adult. It is spicy. So there's more than obviously there's more than in Temptation of Magic. But also that it is subtly interconnected to the Temptation of Magic world. But I can't say how probably. And that it
Something.
also has like a new it's an element that we know of supernaturally, but I've tried to do something new with it as well. Um, so
And that one probably wouldn't come out for
I
a
need to
bit.
sell that one first because I've had to,
Oh.
yeah, so it's written and it would be going out to publishers. So before I could ever announce that, I'd need to get that sold and then on we go. So yeah. So hopefully I would be able to announce that later this year as well. But
Yeah. Oh, that'd
that's
be
that's
wonderful.
yeah, that would be great. So fingers crossed.
Thank you so much. I am so happy that I got to talk with you. I had so many questions. I was telling you earlier that I was like, it's gonna be an hour. It was clearly not just an hour, and I apologize for
That's
that.
okay.
But I just
It
loved
was
all your
great.
answers, and I didn't want to cut the questions. And I just needed to know. So I appreciate you taking the time chatting with me for so long, and all your very insightful answers, and letting us into your world and your mind. And I really appreciate you sharing that with me.
Well, I'm just so grateful that you asked me because I've had a great time. So this was a great break from writing and meetings and all that fun, slightly stressful stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you, and I can't wait. And everyone, hold on, let me grab the book so it's like really sellable. Everyone, go read *The Temptation of Magic* by Megan Scott. It's a really great book. You will not regret reading it.